Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Kelsey Grammer is out with a new movie in theaters and on demand called Charming the Hearts of Men. I spoke with the 5-time Emmy winner about his illustrious career from Cheers to Frasier and even Sideshow Bob in The Simpsons. Hey, Kelsey Grammer, thanks so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. How are you, Jason?
I'm doing well. We're talking the new movie Charming the Hearts of Men in theaters and on demand. You and I know what it's about, but tell our listeners the basic premise here.
Well, quickly, it's set in the South in the 60s. There's a congressman who has a good friend, a woman he's always really fancied, basically, who her father dies. And so we start out with that as the premise. But it's in the period of time when the civil rights legislation was being written and voted on. And there was one sort of glaring omission in the bill. It had been written only for men. And this congressman, by virtue of his, this is the fictionalized part, by virtue of his fondness for a certain woman, and he'd always been a sort of a champion of women's causes, introduces the word sex into the bill in a speech where he says that if this legislation goes forward as written, your mothers, sisters, wives, and daughters will be the only second-class citizens left in America. And so it was voted on to include women by adding the word sex. And when you kind of discriminate based upon race, color, creed, or sex.
Isn't that the way it always is? I mean, it was all, back in the founding documents, it was all men are created equal. And then they do the civil rights bill and they leave out the word sex. So
it's like they get full of themselves, they just tend to skip it. And this is where the action of the film unfolds. Basically, there's a moment when she says to her friend, the congressman, and we just call him congressman, she says, "Put women in." And he says, "I'll be remembered as a fool." And oddly enough, he has been sort of relegated to a sort of a distant page in history.
Wow. So who is this actually? I know there's fictional, you have artistic.
Well, it's fictionalized. I think his name was Congressman Smith, honestly, but he was a lovely guy. He was a kind of Dixiecrat, a man of his time. He served in 2 wars, World War I and World War II. I mean, he was an extraordinary guy, a bit of a patriot, I guess, but he was from the South, and he thought things were working just fine the way they were. And then he had the foresight and the courage to say, okay, let's take a big step forward. And they handed over power and also included women, which is by virtue of his participation, it was written into law.
Wow. And then, the what is it? I guess Diane Ladd's character says, it's not our business to tell them what they should do with their freedom, but it's our business to make sure they have the right to try. And it's some powerful stuff.
Boy, I sure agree with that.
Exactly. How much does your relationship with the protagonist's father, is that something as you as an actor, that's something you really latch on to, and that you're like, this is going to be my backstory, this is going to be my cornerstone for this bond that me and the main character are building
the real cornerstone for me was that he always loved her. Yeah. He always loved her, even when it was probably not appropriate for him to love her. He just when she was, that little girl running by, when he was, when he knew her dad, when he was a judge, and he was a young congressman and a guy coming back from the war. I mean, he just always thought that girl lit up the world. And of course, when she's a grown woman, he's a little nervous about it, but she basically lets him know it's okay. And that's a nice thing. Anna is great in it, by the way. She's just a terrific gal.
Yeah, you both literally light up the world, the characters, by changing the world. Talk more about Anna in the lead role, how powerful she is on screen. And then also, a great supporting cast. We mentioned Diane Ladd, but also Sean Astin. I mean, dote on your cast a little.
Yeah, it was a great group of people got together. And honestly, the woman that, wrote the film is a restaurant owner in Atlanta. She's an extraordinary gal, and fell on this story and wanted to write a movie, and I think she did a hell of a job. The script came across my desk a few months before we finally started shooting, and I just thought, boy, this is really interesting. Historically, it's interesting, but the texture of the relationships and the sort of the sensibility about the South and the way the 2 worlds of that were sort of drawn along lines of race sort of functioned in a weird way during that time that was seemed to be nice for everybody. in a weird way. I mean, I don't want to go like wax nostalgic about Jim Crow or anything, but the world functioned and it seemed okay to a lot of people at the time. But you know what? Change had to come. And so this guy had the courage to say, let's change it across the board.
Nice. And I know, yeah, well, I guess a couple years ago you won a Tony producing Broadway's The Color Purple. Now you're doing, you know,
Right.
which was more race relations, but also some feminist themes in that too. She stands up to her husband.
Absolutely, yeah. No. Listen, I think it's a timely piece, and I think it shows you that people have been trying to, you know, fight this fight. You know, good people have been trying to fight this fight for a lot longer than people know.
Well, thanks for being adding another, you know, entry into into that fight.
Yeah.
I know we're trying to fit a lot in a short amount of time, so my listeners will kill me if I don't at least ask you about arguably the greatest sitcom of all time, Cheers. See, with you, I could say too. I could say Cheers or Frasier, but let's start with Cheers. You arrived in season 3 and stayed, you know, until the end. But how welcoming were they? That cast was so great already when you joined in. But man, I mean, what made that show special? Was it just that vibe where you guys felt like everybody knows your name just like us? I mean, what made that show?
You know what? It was the writing, honestly. I mean, they were great, and they just were really and funny. And you know, the guys that started the show, the Charles brothers, with Jimmy Burrows, were arguably the best in the business at the time, and they had an idea to write a show that you could listen to, and it would be just as good as if you didn't see it if it was on the radio. They wrote that kind of script, and it was good. And they, you know, the fact that it had this, it celebrated the camaraderie and the sort of the idea that you have your local, you know, that was a very cool thing. And my guy was written as a device to break up Sam and Diane, Frasier, and then they, you know, they realized he had more comedy mileage in it. So, you know, as Woody Allen says, funny is money. And so.
And for Dr. Frasier Crane, it gets arguably the most successful spinoff of a TV show ever. I mean, it wins what, like 5 straight Best TV Comedy Emmys, and you yourself won what, I think 4 acting. How you did all right. How satisfying was it each year? I mean, you're going up against freaking Seinfeld and Friends and all these titans that, you know, in any other era would easily be the best show. Was that just extra satisfying, or did it get awkward after a while? Like, man, Seinfeld should win one of these years.
No, you know what? We never really thought about it much. I mean, it was just nice to see that people recognize the quality of the show, and that, you know, we were good at what we did. I guess, you know, maybe we had that sort of underlying thing. We weren't ever the favorite. We were like sort of the underdog a little bit, and then of course then it sort of changed. Then the narrative changed, and then they changed all the voting rules and made sure we couldn't win another one for a while. It was pretty funny. So we never won another best show after the first 5.
Well, it's like Bob Gibson in baseball. They changed the pitcher's mound. They changed the rules for you, and then you know you're the all-time great.
So you've done something pretty great. Yeah,
exactly. They changed TV rules for you, the Emmy rules. So Frasier got the spinoff. If there was another Cheers character you would have loved to see get a spinoff, which would you think would have done the best?
Oh gosh, I never really thought about that. I mean, there was the Tortellis, wasn't there? Oh, but that was her husband. That was Nick Tortelli.
Right.
Rhea.
I'm talking the main characters. If there was another one that could have gone toe to toe with Frasier.
Well, maybe, you know, I mean, certainly Ted, you know, could have done something. Sam maybe, but or maybe Rebecca. Rebecca was funny as hell. I don't know.
They're all great. Norm, everybody's great.
They were wonderful.
Well, final question before we wrap it around back to Charming Hearts of Men. I got to know about Sideshow Bob in The Simpsons, Krusty the Clown's devilish sidekick. How much fun was voicing that role? I mean, you're so known for Cheers and Frasier, and then all of a sudden you get this animated role. How cool was that?
Right. Well, it comes from, you know, I mean, honestly, Sam Simon was a writer on Cheers. And he just called me one day and said, "We've got this role. I think you're great for it. Will you come in and do it?" And I said, "Sure." So that's how it happened. And then I saw in the character something funny that reminded me of a person I knew years before, and someone I had sort of logged away in my memory as a character I would play one day and sort of, you know, rip him off, right? And that was Ellis Rabb. And I did it. I did an impression of Ellis, basically. "Oh, but there you are." And I had some wonderful afternoons with Ellis when I was working on his apartment, painting his apartment, you know, doing some carpentry and stuff. And he was a a one-off. He was an extraordinary guy.
Thank you so much for just doing a Sideshow Bob impression on on our interview. Well, tying it back around, I know you're a busy man and we got to run. So sort of, final seconds. Why should our listeners tune in and check out Charming Hearts of Men? What separates it, from all the other stuff streaming right now?
Oh, wow. I mean, it's an historical piece that is fairly accurate. It describes things without beating you over the head. It is romantic, and I'm in it. And Anna Friel's in it, and the rest of the cast members you mentioned are in it. And there's some really powerful stuff in it. I mean, some perspective you might not be expecting from that time that I think is probably accurate. It's an entertaining experience in a comprehensive way.
Awesome. And the fact that we can watch it at home means you can watch it while eating some tossed salad and scrambled eggs. There you go. I'm sure you never heard that pun in your life. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kelsey Grammer, for joining us and talking your whole career in a short amount of time. We fit a lot in. So thank you so much, sir.
My pleasure, man.
Best of luck with the movie.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.